Do you believe everything you think about? See, if you ever really listen to those thoughts in your mind and you start realizing that they criticize you, they give you self-doubt, they hold you back, well, then this video is for you. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a few techniques that I've used to really stop listening to my thoughts and making choices on those thoughts and not really believing everything that they're talking about. So I kind of want to start out with a story. Back in the day when I first quit my first job to move thousands of miles to start a business that I had no idea how to do it or how to start it, just the opportunity came up. I had a lot of self-doubt, right? I had recently just about a year moved into my own space. I lived in Chicago and I had a great job. And then the opportunity came up to start a business. Specifically, it was with my brother. And I had no idea how much money I was going to make. I remember I asked him like, hey, so how much are you going to pay me? And he said, I have no idea. It's a startup, right? Like most businesses, when they start, you have no funds. And that was us when we started this business. So I had all these self-doubts. And that's the first time I started realizing that the critics in your head, right? Those thoughts that kind of hold you back, they kind of are just there. But I remember to this day, like I knew what I wanted to do, but then these thoughts started coming up of holding me back of the thing that I wanted to do because it was a great opportunity, right? And I was kind of sick and tired, of the 9 to 5 grind. And, there was just I kept hitting that ceiling level. But I knew that I wanted to do more, right? And that I had more to offer. So this new opportunity came up, but all these thoughts came in, right? And when I started realizing these thoughts aren't actually me, meaning, a lot of them were, thoughts, they kind of sounded when I kind of dug in a little bit deeper, like my parents, right? You don't just give up a job that, pays you okay to move thousands of miles away, right? And not even knowing how much you're going to make, right? And these thoughts weren't actually me. They were actually things of my past, of my parents that I heard, of self-limiting beliefs, right? Of my boss, because when I actually quit, he told me that I would fail. He literally told me, I sat in his desk and I told him I was going to start a business in Colorado. And he said, did you know 80% of the businesses fail within their first year? You will be back, right? For me, that was all I needed to go all in, right? Give my 2 weeks and then, just give it. That's just my personality. When I commit to something, I just go all in, especially if I get some resistance, right? Because we need that push. But that's when I started realizing that all these thoughts that we have, we can't really fall into them, right? Because the way your brain works, and if you really get to study, our thoughts are made of, usually they're thinking of the past. And now the past is very kind of subjective, right? Because two people can experience the same thing. Give you an example. Two people can see the same movie and come out with totally different stories or lessons, right? Or if they liked it or if they didn't. So if your thoughts that you hear about, or, that you're hearing, like in your head, if they're made up of the past, that's really subjective, right? It's that perception that you took about your thoughts at that time, right? And that's what I have learned, that just because my thoughts are thinking something of the past, it necessarily isn't true. It's only at that moment that's what I chose to believe. It might not even apply in my current life. So when I wanted to quit my job, right? And it took me a long time to get that job to where it was really easy for me. And I had to realize that these thoughts that were holding me back, because of my parents, right? Because like the number one thing was to go to school and get a job, and get security. Like that was important for them. But for me, maybe it was a different path, right? So you need to challenge those thoughts, specifically if they bring you back from an old belief. And I'll be talking more about this in the channel, about our beliefs. And the beliefs are they're deeper rooted. But that's one of the things that you can start doing, is really start listening to your thoughts. And one of the best ways that I do is I journal. I've gone through a lot of periods of my life where I journal, then I don't journal. But for the past few years, I journal a lot. I have a big stack of journals. And what journaling does is really, it allows you to get to write those thoughts that you're thinking and put them on paper. And then when you visually see it, at least for me, I start realizing, wow, like, what does this actually mean, right? Wait a minute, it's not even me. It's maybe like an old belief, or maybe someone told me, like, I heard my dad or my brother or my sister, my cousin, someone say this about, quitting your job and starting, a new business, right? Or maybe, that I can or cannot, be fit or be financially free, right? You start realizing that these thoughts that are based on the past, it was just subjective. It was just a certain experience there. So they might not even apply to you right now, right? So that's one. Now, the other thing, sometimes your thoughts kind of, project things out in the future. Like, if I do this thing that I'm going to do now, like, how is it going to affect me? I'm going to put myself in danger, right? I'm not going to be able to have money. I don't know about this uncertainty, right? Like, how can I guarantee that I'm going to be safe, right? So sometimes your thoughts project to the future as well. And of course, we cannot predict the future, right? So you really want to question those too. How reliable are those thoughts, right? Because you have to realize too that your thinking patterns and really part of our nervous system, and you develop, through your ego as you're growing up. And there's certain parts of you that are going to keep you comfortable, are going to keep you safe, right? And that's why starting with your thoughts, one of the best ways, if you're doing something and then all of a sudden you get flooded with like self-doubt, criticism, you want to realize that those thoughts aren't really you. So you want to do the separation. Now, it took me a while to do this, but I'm going to make this real easy for you, is you really want to start seeing those thoughts. We think in pictures. So one of the best for me, and if you really start going into how you think, usually when you get a thought, you're going to get an image. It might be someone talking, it might just be words, or it might be pictures, but you really want to start separating yourself from your thoughts. For me, I'll give you that example. My thoughts are always on my left side. For some reason, I see them. They're always on my left side, and they're usually words. Sometimes, I can associate, like a voice to them. But you want to start separating yourself from it, and the easiest way is to do that. Start visually seeing your thoughts, not you yourself, but like outside of you. There's different ways you can, other methods, but by like clouds, you can see your thoughts as clouds. So one of the great ways as it has helped me is to meditate. And the purpose of meditation is really to be present, but also to separate yourself from your thoughts, to see them outside of you, right? To realize that they're not you, and what you are now, you're not stuck in the past. You're not stuck in the future, because that's usually what thoughts are, right? So you really want to start separating yourself, and you can start doing it by visually seeing your thoughts, right? And meditation is one of those great ways to do it. Now, for many years, for me, meditation, I struggled. I, kind of didn't understand it, but, meditation is pretty straightforward. And you can do walking meditations, right? There's all kinds of meditation, but really, meditation is very subjective. It's going to be very personal to you and whatever feels right to you. But for myself, the purpose that I've experienced of meditation is for one, to separate from my thoughts. Lately, I've been practicing the Zen meditation, which is a form of Japanese meditation, and it's just a sitting meditation. And what I do is I sit and I count my breaths, right? 1 through 10, inhale 1, exhale 2, and then go up to 10 and then come back down. Now, the master that I was learning from this, he said, all you do is sit with your meditation, right? And you can't really control your thoughts, right? That's going to be impossible. For many years, I tried to control my thoughts, and, your thoughts are going to be there always. And what you're doing in this process of separating yourself from your thoughts. That voice is always going to be there. That critic, that inner critic is always going to be there. Now, what you want to do is really start training them to separate yourself from your thoughts. Once you start breaking that attachment to your thoughts and saying, you know what, just because I'm thinking this, it doesn't make it true, right? So that's why we don't want to believe everything we think about. There's a couple ways to do it. Like I mentioned, journaling is really important. Journal your thoughts. Now, for me, the first time I started journaling my thoughts, it can be actually kind of scary because one of the best ways to, not feel by the end of the day you're so mentally tired because you've like had all these thoughts is to put them on paper. But when you put them on paper, you'll be surprised, right, what your thoughts are actually thinking, because the majority of the time it's always, you're always, for myself anyway, I was always criticizing myself, self-doubting myself, and I was very negative, about myself. So once I started seeing it on paper, then I was able to start training them and training myself to separate myself from my thoughts. So you really want to be able to start breaking free, right? And feeling more abundant and, choosing and having a life that really just makes you vibrate at a higher level. Having a business that is you and it resonates with you and where you become more authentic, right? Is to really separate yourself from your thoughts. And that's the inner critic. There's also something else that I want to share that kind of blew my mind when I learned about this is there's always internally that conversation, your thoughts, right? But you always have, there's almost three parts that you sometimes hear of the conversation, right? You're going to have a child conversation, you're going to have a critical parent, and then you're going to have an adult. So you can think of them as three, right? So the child, it's always, for me, it was always like, like poor me, right? I can't do this, just like a 5-year-old child, right? Like those same conversations. And then you got your critical parent, the one that's always judging, that doubting you, like, I can't believe you did this, or I can't believe you did this wrong, right? So you have these two conversations, the child, that woe is me, I'm so sorry, like I can't do this. And then the other one that's always criticizing you, like, I can't believe you did this, right? So you always have the conversation. And by the way, they're made up from stories that you had during your childhood, right? These are stories that you picked up as a child that we have as adults still, right? And there's certain things that trigger them, and I'll talk about those in other YouTube videos. And then you have the adult in the center. Now, the adult is somewhat like the mediator. It's the more rational, right? So the child and the parent, they're very emotional, right? Like, as you can think of, like a small child's very emotional. Sometimes a critical parent can be very, very emotional. But in the center, you have the adult, right? The more rational, the more critical thinking, right? And our goal is to listen to that child, right? And listen to the adult, but not pay attention, not believe what they say, and really use the adult wisdom inside you to be able to regulate those two, right? It's like, okay, I get it. I screwed up. I did this, and it wasn't correct, but I can learn from it, right? Or maybe I've never done this, and I feel like they're hurting me, or like they did this against me. But you know what? I am learning from this, and I can grow from this, right? So you have to start seeing your thoughts in a separation, and then you start focusing on how to train them, right? And choosing them, and to see what you can learn from them, because they're always going to be there, right? If it's making a YouTube video, if it's starting a new job, if it's talking to a client, if it's talking to, person that you're going to meet for the first time, that's when those thoughts just flood, all over you, right? For me in the past, it used to travel really quick, and I would feel it in my body, like the sensations. And that's when I knew that I had some sort of thoughts going on that were trying to hold me back, right? But that's just part of our nervous system. So if you start separating yourself from your thoughts, not start believing everything you think about, and you can see them as what they are. You're always going to have the inner child, and then you're always going to have the inner, adult critic, or the parent criticizing you, right? And then you want to be the adult, right? Like the more rational mind that's actually going to be able to process everything you're hearing and not attach yourself from your thoughts. And there just becomes a lot of freedom into that, right? That allows you to, express yourself genuinely, to connect with people genuinely. Because usually when you feel unauthentic is when we're giving too much to our thoughts, right? Or our ego takes over, which is just a protection mechanism of who we think we are. As we grow up, we kind of develop this. I'm reading this really great book about, the 12 archetypes. And there's really, multiple facets of our inner psyche that we can utilize to become really who we want, to build a business that we want, to build a life that we want, to really start breaking free from, when we feel unauthentic, right? Where we want more, right? Because there are limits that we place on ourselves, right? And I believe we are on a different various journeys, right? That we need to keep raising the bar, the level, but we do hit those ceilings, right? And the very first step is to know and to understand that you don't have to believe everything you think about. Challenge those thoughts, realize they're developed from your past or possibly thinking about the future. And the only thing that really matters is that present moment now. And remember, you're going to have that little child voice, and then also that parent, that critical parent chatting with you. And you're just in the middle. You're the adult, you're the present moment, and you get to choose which thoughts you want to pay attention to. Maybe you don't want to choose any of the thoughts that you're paying attention. Maybe you got to just start being more present, right? So I hope this helps in your journey to, really self-develop. It has brought me to a big realization for myself that I am not my thoughts. I don't have to believe everything that I think about. I actually get to choose. You actually get to choose what you think about. And journaling is a very constructive way to be able to start channeling those thoughts and see them on paper. There's a lot of power into that. So I hope this finds you well. I hope you found it valuable. And please subscribe to the channel. Put some comments down below. And, share, have you been able to choose those thoughts, right? Have you been able to change your life by not, believing everything that you think about? So I thank you for watching and wish you the best. Namaste.